Welcome to Sailing Avanti. We are Gerard and Jacqueline, sailing our 41-foot monohull Avanti around the world from Cape Town, South Africa. The reason we decided to spend a few months in Carriacou and Grenada is that it's officially below the hurricane belt as recognized by some of the insurance companies. So that means there's a very small chance of getting a storm or a big hurricane coming through here. I think the last one that came through Grenada was in 2004. So although the chances are small, it could happen that a system could come through here and could develop into quite a big storm. So we are therefore wary, and we are having a look every day basically on a website from the National Hurricane Center in the US that keeps an eye on these systems, that develops off the west coast of Africa and travels all the way across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, to just see if there's not something approaching that we should be concerned about. So earlier this week we saw on that website that there is what they call a tropical wave that's developing off the coast of Africa, and that is predicted to come quite a bit on a southern path, with the center basically between Trinidad and Grenada, and the highest winds predicted basically over Carriacou. So unfortunately, as that system developed, it looked more and more that it is gonna hit us. And although it's not a hurricane yet, it's just a tropical wave, and it can develop into a tropical depression, which means it started swirling and making an eye because of the Coriolis forces of the Earth's rotation.
So the plan we had, if something like this was to form, would have been to either sail west or further south, because hurricanes tend to make that swerve up going north, and unfortunately that's not a good idea with this one heading kind of in a straight line west. So we've got two options here in Carriacou. The first one is to head into the hurricane hole, which is a lagoon surrounded by mangroves where we can tie up, or we can let out more anchor chain and stay in the bay. A lot of the sailors are saying they're staying put, and some of the others saying if it gets worse than the prediction at the moment, you'd rather want to be in the mangroves. So some of them are saying they'll head into the mangroves closer to date, because for now it's still a few days away. But everybody's a little bit on edge at the moment, and we'll see. I think for now our plan is to head into the mangroves first and just go have a look at what is to expect when going in there, because we haven't been, and then make an informed decision.
Yeah, so we're gonna launch the dinghy and just go in there before we take in Avanti, just to have a look, because it's not really charted, and we've heard different things from different cruisers, so first-hand look would be good.
To our surprise, some boats have already arrived and tied up to the best spots with the bow pointing to the forecasted wind direction. Will we or won't we be in here? That's the question. We're doing our research, and then we'll have to make a decision tomorrow at the lake.
Maar het lijkt goed. Het lijkt baie mooi.
5.2, so it's lekker diep.
Sharp. Based on what we saw in the mangroves, we decided to get Avanti in there as quick as possible, to get a spot that's reasonable. With our draft being quite deep, we don't have as many choices as the other boats. Sadly, the spot where we checked the depth and the wind direction was already taken by the time we got Avanti into the mangroves. We therefore had to make a quick decision to take another spot where the wind will be on our beam, which is not ideal, but better than being in the bay. We dropped our stern anchor and started our approach to our chosen spot, But as we got closer, people started shouting at us from other boats to be on the lookout for a steel wreck that was underwater very close to the spot we have chosen. I quickly realized that we were heading straight towards this underwater wreck, and with our stern anchor deployed, we had very little maneuvering options.
Gaan reverse, liefie, reverse. Reverse. Ja, vinnig, hier's 'n klip. Yes, thank you. Okay, so nou moet jy mooi dop hou. Gaan net stadig, stadig, stadig. Watch it, ons gaan nou die anker optrek. Maar jy moet
Sê my wanneer jy draai.
okay, draai nou skerp. Check it, hierdie ding is net hier. So as jy hom sien, moet jy uit. Okay. Gooi reverse. Reverse, vinnig, hard. Kijk, kom help hier zo met de touw. Kom. Wat heb je nodig? Ik ga met ons springen.
Luckily everything worked out and we tied Avanti to the mangroves in a secure location. We learnt a very important lesson today, and we should have probably taken a local to show us a spot where we know it's deep enough, or we should have had the dinghy right in front of the boat to make sure the spot is clear before we head in.
Just made it safely into the mangroves. I navigated us in for the first time, making my way through very small spaces, and I think I did fine. We're safely in. Gerard's busy tying up some of the last lines. We feel much better here. We definitely think that we made the right decision by coming in early. We could pick a good spot. We didn't have to worry about hitting other boats when we finally decided on a spot. So I think we are happy about our decision. And then for wine, I normally have wine for celebration only. I have a few good bottles of South African wine left that I'm saving for a special occasion and stuff like that. So cheers, South Africa. We're a bit worried just because we're novices and we don't really know what to expect. So I think if we really knew what our boat can handle on anchor, I think we'd feel a lot better. You know, we have had storms of 45 knot winds and we were fine. I mean, we were worried, but our boat didn't steer difficult. Avanti she just glides through the water, but we've never done that on anchor. So I think that's why we're a bit more precautious than some of the other boats. But yes, it's time to have a big glass of wine and yeah, get ready for whatever lies ahead.
We've tied up Avanti in the mangroves in anticipation for the storm. We're probably a little bit early, but we rather have come in early and have some space. So we're expecting the wind to come, the strong wind at the moment from the east. That's what the prediction is saying, but it could be from anywhere. So it would have been better if we had faced our bow into that wind, but there's not a lot of space on that side of the mangrove. So we've squeezed in here, and the wind will hit us on the beam. So we've got a stern anchor out to the port side that will try and keep the stern of the boat from blowing out. But we also have two springs, one from the stern and one from the midship cleat. It goes to two strong mangroves in over there. So that will keep the boat hopefully in. Then we have two bow lines on the bow, also tied to mangroves, and that seems to be keeping us quite still. There's a few gusts coming through, so at least we can see how the boat is responding. And on that side, for in case the wind comes from all the westerly direction, we also have a spring going that side. So yeah, hopefully that keeps us relatively secure. I think the front of our keel is also a little bit on the sand, it does get deep quite quickly. So the boat is moving around a little bit. It's not, you can feel it's not sitting on the keel 100%. At least there's not a big tidal difference here. So we're going to stick it out here, secure things as far as we can, and hopefully it all works out. We take the last few precautions in taking our bimini down and making sure there's no loose items that can flap around on the boat. The fishing vessel you can see behind us was towed into the mangroves and left on anchor with nobody on board. As the wind swirled around, we quickly realized that this vessel was actually dragging its anchor and coming closer and closer to us and some other boats.
It's a bit close.
With less than 2 meters between us and this swinging fishing boat, we tried to get hold of the owners with no avail. We found some locals that was willing to help, and we ended up helping them to put an additional anchor on the fishing boat and to tie it to the mangroves so that we can be sure it won't hit Avanti and any other boats when the storm came past. The tidal range in the mangroves was more than we expected, and at low tide, Avanti was sitting partially on its keel with its bow in the air. Luckily, it didn't fall to the side as the spring lines helped to keep it upright. Jackie is in her anti-mosquito gear, so she's getting chowed here in the mangroves. They love her blood, and there's so many here, so she's trying to hide from them, but they're getting her even under the sheets. In the end, we were happy with our choice to move into the mangroves, with the National Hurricane Center giving this tropical wave a 90% chance of becoming a cyclone about a day before the storm would hit us.
It is probably 3 or 4 hours before we start getting the first winds of the storm, and I have the ostrich personality where I put my head in the sand and pretend everything's gonna be fine. And Gerard over there is our big overthinker, and he's thinking about every single thing that's gonna go wrong. So fun night ahead of us, but I'm sure we're gonna be fine, right?
Probably no sleep, but let's see how it goes.
We'll be okay.
The storm came like a thief in the middle of the night, and exhausted Gerard slept through most of it after all the preparation work. It was not as bad as we expected, and thankfully we only had gusts up to 40 knots on the beam. The conditions, as you can see, were a lot worse for the sailors in the bay, and we were very happy to be in the sheltered mangroves.
The only downside of being in the mangroves was that Avanti had wiggled its keel into the sand while the wind was gusting to 40 knots. We were therefore a little bit worried that we would have to time our departure very carefully to get her out high and dry on high tide. For the oysters growing on the mangrove roots, the storm was a complete non-event.
Gerard's releasing the lines. Here we go.
The swell in the bay took a day or two to calm down after the storm had passed. We therefore decided to stay another 2 days in the mangroves before it was time to get out. At the crack of dawn there was a break in the weather and the wind calmed down, and it was about 2 hours after high tide and Avanti was floating, so we decided there and then it's time to get out. We removed our stern anchor by winching it in a little bit until it broke through, and then we could pull it in by hand. After that we cleared the bow lines, and the last was to remove the spring from the beam so that Jackie could go astern and Avanti was free.
Minutes after casting off, our flat water conditions changed by first bringing in gusts of approximately 25 knots and buckets of rain that would have made our departure a lot more difficult. The last check we needed to do was to have a look at the keel once anchored, and once again luck was on our side and we only lost paint on the lead bulb. This shouldn't cause any problems until we're able to repaint later in the year. We were extremely happy to be back in the clean waters with the little fish below Avanti. All storms come to an end, and some even have double rainbows.
Thank you for watching this episode. Please give us a like, a comment, or subscribe to our channel if you want to get regular updates to when these videos are launched. Also, a special thanks to our Patreons that helps and contributes to the making of these videos. Join us in the next episode as we finally lift our anchor and set sail to 2 uninhabited islands.